Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wildwood Farm and today's edition of Getting Started at Your Off-Grid Homestead. A little bit about us. We're an off-grid, family-sized, small homestead. We've been doing this in this exact location since 2017. We have quite a few more years' experience. We went totally off-grid in 2007 with children. So here I am to share with you my personal experiences and some hints and ideas how to make your destination excursion into off-gridding easier and skip maybe some of the mistakes that we made. Today's episode is going to be about the most important plan and decisions to make for your off-grid homestead. The place you choose to be, the land. That is the one consistent. That is the one thing that there is not very much that you could do about. Once you purchase it, you're pretty much stuck with that. You can't pick up your property and move it to a better climate. You can't pick up your property and move it to a better location. You can't normally grow your property unless some land comes available next to you. You can't, without a lot of inputs, change the water or the rain or the sun that falls on it. So land is the biggest thing you need to think about first, and it'll probably be your biggest expense. So, like I said, decide what kind of climate do you want. Do you want 4 seasons? Do you want shorter winters, longer summers? Do you want hot, or do you care for colder winters instead of the hot summers? Do you want mountaintops, or do you want wooded land, or do you want just open rolling plains? All of those will make a big difference as to what you can do with the property that you get. Next thing that you need to consider is how close it's going to be to a population center for a lot of reasons. As long as the world stays semi put together, you're not going to have to worry about people trying to randomly just steal your stuff or be invaded by hordes of people. But if you are close to a population center, what's the chances of the city growing and taking over your property or having the zoning changed? Or what's the chances of your area, and we had this happen to us, look like it's country and look like it's not going to have an HOA, but once you buy the property and you get there and you find out there is an HOA, and there's a lot of restrictions on what you can do to the property. That's a big consideration. If you can't have a homestead, why buy the property? Looks good, but I mean, why? Honestly, the idea is to have freedom. Also, in a population center, while it may not have written restrictions, the neighbors may not like what you do. It's called NIMBY, or not in my backyard. You may live somewhere and be doing just fine and not have to worry about zoning, which is another issue that you need to look into before purchasing it. But then you get somebody that moves into a parcel next to you and they don't like livestock, or they don't like the smells or the sound, or they claim they just don't like the smells or the sound. And then you're going to have a neighbor that makes your life a living hell, because then they will weaponize the government and animal control and the police and everything against you. The whole idea is to have some peace and quiet on your own property, right? So that would be a big consideration, how close you are to the population center. I'll relist them again. Zoning restrictions, HOAs, the possibility of it being engulfed by the nearby cities or towns and it no longer be farmland, or just you'll be able to farm on it, but you just have all these neighbors next to you. Also, with a consideration to population centers, what about schooling if you have school-age children, or work for yourself if you need to go to a job, or access to stores, because you're going to need to buy things. Where we're currently at, our nearest lumber store, big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's, is almost an hour away, which is perfectly acceptable for us because we don't make that trip very often any longer. But when you need to, that's still a long distance. Our closest Walmart is 30 minutes away. Again, is that something that's okay with you? Can you exist with not having to run to the store every day to pick up something for dinner. Schools. How far away is the school going to be? Is your child going to be bused, or are you going to have to drive them to school every day? Now, if that school is a half an hour away one way, that's not that far, really, but that's an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon that you have to be somewhere at a certain time. That will cut into everything else that you're doing on your farm. Okay? Or also, if your child's going to school and you have to pick them up, what about your job? Are you going to be available to pick up your child from school at those certain times? Or will you have somebody else that will be able to pick up that child from school if there's no bus to your property because it's so far away from the school? Stores, that's a convenience factor. But what about hospitals? Do you have somebody in your family that needs or might possibly need emergency medical care? Do they have an extreme allergy? Do they have a medical condition that will require quick and prompt emergency care? What about fire? Will you be able to contain a fire if you have one on your property? How far away is the closest fire department? Okay, let's see, medical, fire, police. Okay, now most of us homesteaders are individuals and like to DIY all of our needs, including security. Okay, but there will become a day where you do need police. How far away are they? How quick will their response time be? How willing will they be to come out to your property? Okay, another issue, you have a farm. Lots of people dump animals on other people's places when they see animals. The thought process goes, oh, well, they have animals. They won't care if they get another one. We had tons of dogs that we had to dispose of ourselves because they were dropped on our property because we already had dogs and they didn't think I'd care. I cared. It caused a problem. So will there be an animal control? Or will it be another something that you'll have to DIY yourself? Those are another considerations. Now, another thought, how much land do you want? Do you want like acreage, hundreds of acreage? Or are you just looking for a 5 to 10 acre plot? Or are you just looking for a couple of acres? Because to be honest here, we live on 2 acres and we do everything on our 2 acres. Yes, that means I have to import a lot of feed and hay because no, I do not have pastures for my livestock. But that would be a consideration. You move on to small acreage, it is possible to make it work, but you will need a lot of exterior input. You need to make your feed man and your hay man your best friends, and they will be the first person that gets paid above and beyond everything else. If you have hundreds of acreage, is it going to be wooded land, or is it going to be pasture land, or is it going to be a mix that you'll be able to turn out livestock and supplement their feed without having to support Atwoods or your local feed mill all year round? Then another question, will you be able to maintain all that property? Yes, having hundreds of acres is great, but could you fence it in? Could you find some way to keep it secure so that you don't have people encroaching upon your property, hunting, whatever, squatting? People do strange things. Or just deciding that, oh, look, it's an empty piece of land, so I'm just going to go ride my four-wheeler. Okay? Can you secure that piece of property? Will you be able to maintain it? We all get older every day. So maybe when you're in your 30s or 40s, it's not an issue. But what about when you're in your 60s or 70s? Or what about if something happened to you? Just last year, I was out goofing off and I fell and I blew out a knee. And I was pretty much bedridden for a week. Well, I wasn't really. I should have been, but I still got out to my barns on my crutches. But if I had more than 2 acres of property and I had to go walk lands to find my livestock to bring them in, it wouldn't have happened. So how would I have taken care of my stock then? That's something that you need to think about. The what ifs. Like I said in my very first video, expect the absolute worst. Plan for that and hope for the best. Hope that nothing bad happens. I've been taking care of animals for a very, very long time, and I have never been severely injured like I was last winter. That blew my mind. Shane ended up learning how to do livestock fast. But that is something that you need to think about, because when you have animals and you have equipment, accidents will happen. Okay, so now that you've got the idea of the land and that what you want to do, write it down. Toss it around with everybody else, okay? Because like I said, if you have a piece of desert property and you want to have a huge garden, what are you going to do about water? It doesn't rain very much in the desert. The ground's not very good for crops. You can change it by importing water. People port water all the time, or sinking a very deep well. You can change your soil by chemical means, or by manures from other places, or doing various other back to Eden garden methods, which is not even tilling up the land. Basically, you don't even use the land that you have. You just pile wood chips and manure and other compostables, and you make new dirt, basically, on top of your old dirt. But what you are handed at the day that you sign that contract is what you're going to have to work with. It can be changed, but not much. And then, of course, you can never change the weather that you live in, okay? So if you have a long rainy season and you're going to have a bunch of animals, you're going to have a bunch of mud, okay? If you have a very long winter, you're going to have a very short growing season. Don't plan on eating totally from your gardens unless you learn how to make do with other structures, say greenhouses or things like that, to extend your growing seasons and work with nature. Working against nature and what you have in front of you will never work. You will spend thousands of dollars and waste a lot of time and energy, and you're still not going to change what Mother Nature dishes out to you. And ultimately, again, it all boils down to how much work you want to put into it and how much money that you will have available. So before even going any further, sit down with whomever's going to be involved with you. Pull out that notebook or that file that you have on your computer and start dreaming. Again, start big. Pretend like you won the lotto and go there. And then whittle it down to realistic. You can always buy more land if you buy property that's in an area that's not severely populated. But if you have a landlocked piece of property and other people have already got it, you're stuck with what you've got. The other consideration, back to the population part, is east of the Mississippi is not really a good area in general to try to start a homestead. There are places, granted, there are places all over the East Coast and on the east side of the Mississippi that are rural. You could move into the Appalachian Mountains, and there are places that you could do all of these good things and not have any problems. But in general, east of the Mississippi, the population numbers are extremely high. The zonings are extremely strict. There's so many rules and regulations and laws that you would have to follow. It'll make it extremely hard. And property values are a lot higher east of the Mississippi. Those are all considerations. West of the Mississippi, between the Mississippi and I would probably say west side of Texas, Oklahoma, that's a good stretch right in there, okay? But again, the population is not as dense, but it is dense. You can find good swaths of areas out there that are open for farming. You're not going to have to deal with as many zoning or laws or regulations. And property values are lower. Now, getting towards the west, the Great Plains, low population would be fantastic for homesteading. If you like wide open places, flat lands, hot summers, cold winters, and not a lot of rainfall. But it has been farmed. It's been farmed for decades, centuries. And it can be done, just takes more work. Property values out there are lower. Population densities are a lot better. Probably a lot more cows in some of them states than there are people. Now, California, don't even think about it. It's beautiful. Do not get me wrong. It is beautiful. It does have some absolutely beautiful, wonderful areas. It is a lot of agriculture out there. But there are so many laws and restrictions and regulations out there that starting now, unless you're mega rich, is very, very, very hard. And that is the other consideration. How much money do you have to spend on this property, and what kind of land contract are you going to have? There's so many ways to buy property. You could start off with the least secure as a renter or a tenant, and then you're at the whims of whoever owns that property. If they decide they want to do something else with that property, guess who's screwed? Now, this is the one that I like the best. Owner financed. It's cut and dry. Usually, you don't have to spend a fortune on a down payment. It's basic. You only deal with the owner. You don't have the real estate agent. And you get out there. Most owner finance places that you would find for land, you have to do your due diligence. Research it a lot. Call the area the property's at. Talk to the county people. Talk to the county assessor. Talk to the water corporations to find out what kind of water systems they have out there, or if it's all well, or if you have to be tied into a sewer water system. Talk to electricity systems out there, companies out there. Find out if you can go out there and hook up off-grid, or you have to be tied in to have a permit to have a house. Okay? All those things that you need to look into. When you find an area, start asking those questions. Because while it may not have an HOA or zoning restrictions, the county or the state itself may have laws that outlaw water catchment. Yes, they do have laws in lots of states that limit or refuse to allow you to catch your own water. So that means you have to put in a well, or you have to tie into water systems. Some states do have laws against having your own freestanding solar array, that you have to have a house that's tied to the grid, or at least hooked up to the grid, and get that permit before you can even take up residence into that home. Okay? Some areas, falls under zoning, will have restrictions on what kind of livestock that you can have on the property. Pig farms or CAFOs, big, huge chicken houses and stuff like that, are probably out of the scope of what we all here are planning on doing. But think about it. If you have livestock, you're going to have junk. Okay? To be blunt, we don't call it junk, but other people see it as junk. You're going to have things. A machine will break down. Do they have countywide restrictions against those things? Like having a broke down vehicle while you're working on it? Or do everything has to be licensed and inspected if they do inspections and insured? Or can the county tow it? See, those are tiny things that you need to look into when you're looking for your land. But land is your one thing that cannot really be affected by your own thoughts, hopes, dreams, and money. So this is the one thing that you need to do the most thinking about, because once you're there, you can't change that. You could put one kind of house on your property, bulldoze it, and start all over again. Okay, you can grow one crop, bulldoze that, and start a different crop. You can buy different animals and decide you don't like them and start over on something different. You can change your fencing, but you cannot change the property and land that it's on. So there you go, people. That's the next thing that you need to think about. Think about your land. Start big, whittle it down to something that's more realistic and that you can handle, and then start Googling. And yes, you can find property on eBay. It happens. If you have any questions or want ideas of where to find property, please leave something in the comments, like and share this video, and I will be more than glad to send you some links to the places that we have found property at previously, because we have bought and sold several different properties through several different organizations. I'll be more than glad to send you those links. Thank you all. God bless, and have a great day.